Wednesday, March 28th. Almost done with the month of March. Very busy month of March. A lot going on in the news. I'm not feeling super today, so I hope you'll bear with me while I man through this. Let me make sure this is up and running. All right, we are live. Perfect. So, very busy day. Obviously, the media continues to cover Russia and all things Donald Trump. There are some things going on with the president worthy of covering, but I'm going to focus on some other things first. I hope everyone is having a good day. Just so you know, before I get to stories, I just posted about an hour ago a podcast. I've been doing podcasts. You could get all of my podcasts at patreon.com/Jordan Sheridan Reports. I just posted a fairly long interview I did with a Native American woman. Her name is LaDonna Brave Bull Allard. LaDonna Brave Bull Allard, she is one of the elders and leaders of the Standing Rock Sioux tribe. She is somebody that I interviewed on the ground in Standing Rock many, many times. Move that out of the way. She's somebody that I interviewed many times in Standing Rock. She was the founder of Sacred Stone Camp, which is one of the demonstration camps there. And I wanted to catch up with her to focus on what is going on now, because there is a lot going on as far as life after Standing Rock. And I learned a lot about some of the things that are really serving as obstacles to the tribe. They are actually still being monitored and followed in many cases by Morton County Sheriff, as well as the fact that if you thought they were impoverished before Standing Rock, wait till you hear what LaDonna talks about the financial issues and poverty after the No DAPO movement. So that video is on my YouTube channel. We will also be posting it on SoundCloud, also be posting it on iTunes. What I'm going to be doing is one free podcast a week and one premium podcast that's for my patrons. So again, if you wish to support me, I really appreciate it. I'll put the link right in the chat so you could support my Patreon. It's patreon.com/Jordan Sheridan Reports. As a reminder, this support, your help, is going to get me back into the field, as well as helping us getting a company off the ground. So really appreciate your support. Let me know what you think about the podcasts. Let me know what you think about my daily video diaries that I've been doing. Let me know what you think about the premium content we are delivering, because obviously want to create new content that you like, cover topics that you want me to cover. A lot of you have been sending me emails. I'm trying to read as many as I can and get back to you. But listen and watch the podcast with LaDonna Brave Bull Allard. I definitely think it's important to get what's going on in Standing Rock back in the news, because it's very important what's going on, and shameful a lot of what's going on. So, again, patreon.com/Jordan Sheridan Reports. I will put the link in throughout the broadcast, and appreciate your support. You could subscribe as low as $2 a month, $5 a month, $10 a month, and up. So, big environmental victory. Big environmental victory. You will not see it on CNN. You will not see it on MSNBC. You certainly are not going to read about it in the New York Times. But this victory that just happened in Massachusetts for the anti-pipeline movement, for the anti-climate change movement, is really important. For those of you that don't know, there was a ruling that happened in Massachusetts. Let me bring up the article for you here. No, that's me. We want to get the article here. So, here we go. More than a dozen protesters who clambered into holes dug for a high-pressure gas pipeline said they had been found not responsible by a judge after hearing them argue their actions to try and stop climate change were a legal necessity. Let me try to make this bigger if I can. Here we go. Karina Gore, the daughter of former Vice President Al Gore, was among more than 198 people who were arrested because of their 2015 actions protesting the pipeline in West Roxbury, Massachusetts, a neighborhood of Boston. 13 people were to go on trial this week, though prosecutors downgraded their original criminal charges to one of civil infraction. On Tuesday, Judge Marianne Driscoll of West Roxbury District Court found all 13 defendants not responsible, the equivalent of not guilty in a criminal case. She did so after each of the defendants addressed the judge and explained why they were driven to try and halt the pipeline's construction. Speaking outside the court afterwards, Ms. Gore, 44, director of the Center for Earth Ethics at Union Theological Seminar in New York, said the court's decision was historic. Quote, "What happened today was really important," she said. "The people were found not responsible by reason of necessity. The irony is that we are making ourselves responsible. We're part of the movement that is standing up and saying we won't let this go by on our watch. We won't act like nothing's wrong." Marla Markham of the Climate Disobedience Center, which supported the activists, said that each of the 13 had addressed the judge about why they had been part of the protests against the pipeline, which was constructed by Houston-based company Spectra Energy. Quote, "At the end, she said they were all not responsible by reason of legal necessity. She said she expected an audio recording of the hearing to be made available by the court, and her group would then share it. Neither Ms. Driscoll or the court clerk were available for comment. However, one member of the court's staff who asked not to be named confirmed to The Independent the judge had found them not responsible. The person denied, however, that the judge had made the ruling on the grounds of legal necessity." The environmental and academic Bill McKibben, who was to appear as a defense witness for the defendants, said on Twitter, "Good golly, a few minutes ago a Boston judge acquitted 13 pipeline protesters on the grounds that the climate crisis is made it necessary for them to commit civil disobedience. This may be a first in America." So basically what these pipeline protesters did while protesting the West Roxbury pipeline in Massachusetts, were where the pipeline was going to go in, they staged mass funerals. And they essentially dug themselves into the hole where the pipeline was going to be going. Not the hole, but the whole path. And pretended to be dead. As obviously symbolic of the effects that oil pipelines are having on our climate. And for the first time, a judge has seemingly found that they are not, I don't know what the terminology is, not responsible, but they are not going to face jail time or anything like that for peaceful, nonviolent opposition to, I believe this was a natural gas pipeline in Massachusetts. I want to show you what some of them said. I think this is Gore. Hold on one second. Organization. Here we go. 1 second. This is Vice President Al Gore's daughter after the ruling.
So, hi, I'm Corinna Gore, and I'm with the Center for Earth Ethics at Union Theological Seminary. I was very proud to be a part of this action and this movement here against the West Roxbury lateral pipeline, which is part of a whole system of pipelines, a fossil fuel build-out at a time when we're already experiencing climate impacts, when we know that putting more of this pollution into the air is going to cause serious harm and death and suffering for people on the other side of the world and for our own future generations. What happened today was really important. We had a long and winding road, but essentially the people that put themselves in the way of building this fossil fuel pipeline were found not responsible by reason of necessity. And the irony of that is that we are making ourselves responsible. We are part of the movement that's standing up and saying we won't let this go by on our watch. We won't act like nothing's wrong. We're going to be speaking up in new ways. We're going to be demanding that the people who are in elected office and also the corporations who are putting their cost, the cost of their doing business for their own profits, they are putting that cost on the public. They're putting that cost on future generations. And we are taking responsibility to say no to that. So it's really a wonderful day to be with friends in this movement, to understand the importance of what happened and also to focus on where we go next. We are currently facing a situation with an administration who has made us, the United States, the only country in the world that officially doesn't recognize climate change as a problem. It's not good enough. It's not good enough for our future generations of life, and it's not good enough for our own moral integrity. So I just want to say thank you to the people of West Roxbury.
So there you have it. Her and the other pipeline demonstrators who basically staged mass funerals were found not liable, I think she said out of necessity. Out of necessity, they were found not responsible. I mean, that is the most important thing there is the judge ruling out of necessity, because the judge essentially heard their argument as far as climate change has the fact that they're not getting anything through the local government, they're not getting anything through the state government, they're not getting anything through the federal government, and the threat of climate change made it where it was a necessity for them to try and obstruct the pipeline. That has never been ruled in the United States of America before. Granted, it happened in Massachusetts, which is one of the most liberal states in the country. I don't know if that would happen in North Dakota. I doubt it would happen in Texas. But the fact that you have a judge in Massachusetts ruling that activists, environmental activists who basically, again, staged a mass funeral, are not liable or not responsible, is historic. These are 13 climate activists who essentially, as a symbol, put their bodies on the line in a ditch where a pipeline was supposed to go through. And Shadowproof, I want to tell you what Shadowproof reported. Part of why Judge Mary Ann Driscoll found no liability was because they engaged in a sustained effort to end the project and attempted legal remedies by the city council, mayor, and other agencies to stop the pipeline. Even though the pipeline was still constructed and operational by January 2017, that was irrelevant. The judge found the activists were not liable. So, listen, in all the crap we deal with, in all the losses the progressive movement has been dealing with, and all the times that we're getting, oligarchy is victorious, and plutocrats are victorious, and corporations are victorious, and corporate and bought-off owned Democratic politicians are victorious. This is a major deal. This is a major deal that you have a judge essentially ruling climate change made it responsible for them to obstruct the pipeline. So somebody just asked, Chet Zam 4, what does this mean for further cases? I wish I had a crystal ball, but what I can tell you is for other cases where you have resistance to Line 3, which is going through Minnesota and other states, when you have resistance to the Keystone Pipeline, when you have resistance to the Rover Pipeline, when you have resistance to the Algonquin Pipeline, when you have resistance to the Trans-Pecos Pipeline, when you have resistance to the Bayou Bridge Pipeline. I mean, I could read off as many pipelines as you'd like. The defendants, which are the environmental activists, the water protectors, the Native Americans, now can cite Massachusetts as saying, this is a real thing that a judge in Massachusetts found as it was a necessity in Massachusetts where they had to act based on climate change. And lawyers can now use that as I don't know if you could say a statute, I'm not a lawyer, but as an example, as a case study, that the resistance to pipelines, non-violent resistance to stop pipelines, should not result in jail time, should not result in heavy fines. This is America, and environmental activists and water protectors of the Native Americans have a right to protest a pipeline. That's what I'm getting at. You said, yes, precedent, they could cite that as a legal defense. I don't know if it will win in all states, this one in Massachusetts. But will it win in North Dakota? Will it win in South Dakota? Will it win in Texas? That I couldn't tell you. I still have a healthy dose of cynicism. However, you got to take your victories where we can get it. And the fact that this group of 13 activists was found not responsible, as the judge called it, based on necessity, the necessity meaning climate change, is a major, major victory. If I had sound effects, I'd blow fireworks. It's a major, major victory. I have put out an interview request to interview one of the activists who staged these mass funerals in opposition to the West Roxbury pipeline. They got back to me. Hopefully we're going to do that interview tomorrow and bring that to you. Yeah, I think it's super important because, like I said, when have you heard a judge rule that pipeline protesters or environmental activists are not responsible based on the necessity of protesting climate change? HS 4265 says, but they were shut down, and that was the point of the government attack on them. Yes, they lost. But to every loss, you have to also find small victories. The pipeline is operational, just like Dakota Access Pipeline is operational. But oligarchy was not created overnight. A society based on legalized bribery did not happen overnight. So it's not going to happen overnight that it comes toppling down. So we can't focus on all the gloom and doom. We got to focus on every small victory, because it's going to take those small victories of a progressive getting elected on the local level, a progressive getting elected on the state level, hopefully eventually on the national level. And victories like this, because this is a precedent now for other cases around the country. And kudos to the judge that heard each defendant, each activist who was part of these mass funerals that were staged in where the pipeline was to be dug. This is very, very important. Of course, Spectra Energy, who built it, they haven't commented. I guarantee you other pipeline companies aren't going to comment because they don't want to give this any attention. Amano says liable for what? My gut would say liable for delays in the pipeline construction and costing the oil company money. That's what my assumption is, that they would be held liable for. Because these oil companies, Energy Transfer Partners, they sued Greenpeace for, I believe, $300 million for delays in the pipeline, because these people aren't rich enough. It's an intimidation tactic to sue environmental activists, to try and bankrupt them, to try and scare them, to try and threaten them with jail time, to try and threaten to bankrupt them for life. This is what the oil companies are doing. This is what the politicians who are bought off by the oil companies are allowing them to do. But this is what's happening in Massachusetts. Again, if you came to this late, I'll read it one more time. Here we go. A Boston judge on Tuesday. Oh, wait, here we go. A Boston judge on Tuesday sided with 13 climate activists who were arrested for protesting the West Roxbury Mass Lateral Pipeline. Judge Mary Ann Driscoll of West Roxbury District Court decided it was necessary for the protesters to engage in civil disobedience to block the construction of Spectra Energy's high-pressure frack gas pipeline and acquitted the activists of civil infractions, according to media reports. The judge made the decision after hearing each defendant's testimony. They argued the threat of climate change necessitated their civil disobedience. So, the trial took place this week after the state's prosecutor reduced the original charges of trespassing and disturbing the peace to civil infractions, the equivalent of a parking ticket. The Civil Disobedience Center, which supports the protesters, said that the prosecution's reduced charges means the activists were denied a chance to present, quote, a necessity defense against the gas pipeline. So, hey, find the victories where you can in this movement, especially against the oil companies and the bought-off politicians. And this is a victory. This is a victory. And I do expect you are going to see this used in court cases around the country, where environmental activists from Standing Rock to Keystone to other pipelines have to defend themselves against trumped-up charges. So, bravo to Massachusetts for this one. Unnecessary question. Would they be let off if Al Gore's daughter was not there? I really don't think it has to do with that. to tell you the truth. I don't think it being Al Gore's daughter had much to do with it. I mean, if it comes out that Al Gore is donating a lot of money to this judge, maybe we'll think differently, but there's no evidence of that at this point. So, hey, victory! Moving on to another positive story. 2 in one day. You don't get this often. Well, you know those damn Hillbots that keep saying, oh, Bernie, oh, his movement, the Russians were really behind his movement, and it's not as big as they think, and it will never beat Trump. Well, an infamous, very famous French economist begs to differ. Headline, Thomas Piketty says Bernie Sanders' electoral strategy is the way to beat back the right. A new paper explores how both parties were captured by the elite, leaving a politically rudderless underclass. In a new paper, here we go, in a new paper, French political economist Thomas Piketty, author of the best-selling 2013 book Capital in the 21st Century, argues that Western political parties on the right and left have both become parties of the elites. No shit. Yeah, the 65-page paper from the notoriously punctualist economists titled Brahmin Left vs. Merchant Right, Rising Inequality and Changing Structure of Political Conflict is more surprising for the lessons it has for the political left in the Western world. Indeed, the left populist wing of Western political parties, including the American Progressive Movement, restarted by Bernie Sanders, has reason to celebrate. Get out the vodka! Piketty's paper aligns with their somewhat counterintuitive strategy that shifting the Democratic Party platform more to the left is actually a winning electoral strategy that can help bring back disenfranchised working class voters and less educated voters who currently may not vote at all or identify with right-wing populism. Quote, using post-electoral surveys from France, Britain, and the US, this paper documents a striking long-run evolution in the structure of political cleavages. Piketty writes in the abstract. He goes on to explain the political changes that have happened since the 1950s and 1960s when the, quote, the vote for left-wing socialist, labor, democratic parties was associated with lower education and lower income voters. In other words, the Labour Party of the United Kingdom, the Socialist Party of France, and the Democratic Party of the United States were considered parties that supported and helped destitute and less well-educated voters. Yet over time, those parties, Piketty explains, quote, gradually became associated with higher education voters, which he describes as creating a system of multiple elite parties, where high education's elites now vote for the left, while high-income, high-wealth elites still vote for the right. In other words, both sides of the spectrum become parties of the elite, with no party for less educated folks or the working class. Well, before I read on, this kind of goes to what Thomas Franks was talking about in his book, Listen Liberal. If you remember Thomas Franks, his book, Listen Liberal, I think came out last year. Hold on one second. Sorry about that. Thomas Franks, I got a cold. I'm playing a little hurt. I have a cold that's been lingering for a while. But Thomas Franks, his book, Listen Liberal, was all about how the Democratic Party went from a party in the 1930s, 40s, 50s, 60s to a party of the managerial class, a party of the professionals, a party of the upper middle class suburbanites, aka a growingly more elite, a growingly more group of elites. Whereas blue-collar workers, middle-class workers, and low-educated workers, I don't personally agree with that. There is a lot of Bernie Sanders supporters, there are a lot of progressives that are very well educated, smart enough to know when they're being sold BS. So Thomas Franks showed that in the 1970s and 80s, the Democratic Party moved to catering more to college educated and people in suburban communities and people from the managerial class who were managers and professionals and intellectuals instead of their roots, which was blue-collar workers, manufacturing workers, people who worked for a living, created things. they moved essentially towards upper middle class, which are people doing just fine, and elites. And then they grew to get in bed with Wall Street and big pharma and big oil. So Thomas Piketty's research paper shows this. I'll give you a little bit more. Hold on one second. Piketty argues that the situation contributes. Hold on. Piketty argues that this situation, quote, contributes to rising inequality and a lack of democratic response to it, as well as the rise of populists like Trump, Marine Le Pen in France, and Nigel Farage in Britain. Quote, without a strong egalitarian internationalist platform, it is difficult to unite low education, low income voters from all origins within the same party, he writes. If the Democratic Party was wise, oh, but they're not, it might see Piketty's paper as a chance to improve its electoral strategy. Indeed, the Democratic Party seems to be locked in a battle for its own soul, a fight long presaged that erupted during the 2016 presidential primary. In one corner, since the Clintonite corporate wing of the party, aka the people who keep telling me I'm a Kremlin puppet because I refuse to not cover critically corruption. That makes me a Kremlin puppet. So in one corner of the site sits the Clintonite corporate wing of the party, who believe that the keys to Democratic Party strategy is to move to the center in order to pick up moderate conservative voters who feel left behind by the Republican Party's far-right shift. Well, that was Hillary Clinton's strategy in 2016. Let's get the never-Trumpers, the Republicans who were never-Trumpers. Worked out very well. Do you remember that? When Hillary Clinton and her campaign, no, we're not going to try and actually push policies and create proposals that will attract Bernie's 13 million voters. We don't want to bother with that. We're not going to try to get all those millennials at Bernie rallies to come out for us. We're going to cater to never-Trump Republicans. We're going to bring people like Christine Todd Whitman to speak at the DNC, who used to be the CEO of Hewlett-Packard, laid off a hell of a lot of people, then ran for governor of California, threatening to cut Medicaid. She wanted to cut Medicaid. This was who Hillary Clinton was inviting to speak at the Democratic National Convention to try and move to the center or cater to the never-Trump Republicans. Instead of, I don't know, picking maybe Elizabeth Warren or, dare I say it, Bernie Sanders as vice president. Instead of that tall glass of water, Tim Kaine. It's always astounding. It's always astounding to me when Democrats, the corporate Democrats, basically try to move to the center, cater to Republicans, centrists, Wall Street, and then they lose and they blame the progressives for their loss. Not their strategy, not catering to the wrong people, not the fact that they're abandoning progressives and not actually representing the working class of America. No. I should know and you should know we got to cater to the centrists. We got to cater to the moderates. We got to cater to the never-Trump Republicans. That's how we're going to beat Trump. Well, it didn't work in 2016, and it ain't going to work in 2018, and it certainly ain't going to work in 2020. Yeah, when you run against a child molester in Alabama, a Republican pretending to be a Democrat wins. Doug Jones might as well be a Republican. Would I have preferred him to a child molester? Yes, I would. This guy who just won in Pennsylvania, Conor Lamb. He won. He had some Republican policies, but he also talked about strong unions. He also talked about blue-collar workers. He also talked about universal health care. Do I like that he's for fracking? Hell no. But there were themes that he ran on, including universal health care, strengthening labor unions that are progressive ideals that work in blue-collar America, that actually work in most of America. Why do you think when I was interviewing Trump supporters on the 2016 campaign trail, and I would ask them, well, if not Trump, who would you vote for? I was usually expecting to get Ted Cruz or Ben Carson or another idiot from the clown car. They said Bernie Sanders. Because progressive economics is attractive to progressives. It's also attractive to conservatives, because a lot of conservatives are blue collar. A lot of conservatives are more economically progressive, but conservative on religion and, you know, their guns and what have you. I'll read you a little bit more of this you're not going to see it on CNN. You certainly ain't going to see it on MSNBC and the New York Times, because they don't want to show anything positive about Bernie Sanders. The strategy that I just talked about, moving to the center in order to pick up moderate conservative voters, quote, this was Clinton's strategy to a T. In her electoral campaign, she bragged about her connections to Henry Kissinger. I mean, you can't make this up. She bragged about her connections to Henry Kissinger and her support from billionaire Republicans like former eBay CEO Meg Whitman, who I just described ran for California governor, basically by proposing to throw hundreds of thousands of people off Medicaid. Progressive indeed, while being famously dismissive of social democratic policies like single-payer healthcare. That was Hillary Clinton's campaign, but that's not why she lost. It's the Russians, and it's Jordan, and it's Jimmy Dore. And it's all of Bernie Sanders supporters who wouldn't get in line. It's not the fact that she bragged about loving war criminal Henry Kissinger or strutting around Republicans like Meg Whitman, or basically not even pretending to try and go after the progressive vote when she chose Tim Kaine and refused to endorse things like Medicare for all, free public college tuition. In the other corner, there are those who argue that the Democratic Party will win more voters if it appeals explicitly to class interests and concerns. As Steve Phillips wrote in a Times op-ed last year, if Democrats had stemmed the defections of white voters to the Libertarian or Green parties, they would have won Michigan and Wisconsin. And had they also inspired African Americans in Pennsylvania, Mrs. Clinton would be president. If progressive whites are defecting because they are uninspired by Democrats, moving further to the right will only deepen their disillusionment. Can I read that for you one more time? And I'm going to highlight it. If progressive whites are defecting because they are uninspired by Democrats, moving further to the right will only deepen their disillusionment. And by the way, folks, disillusionment is indeed what people in the Midwest feel. If you remember when I was at the Young Turks, I did a reporting tour. I called it the Disappearing Middle Class Tour. I went from Ohio to Pennsylvania to Michigan to Illinois to Wisconsin. I spoke with single mothers. I spoke with people buried in student loan debt. I spoke with people choosing between medicine for themselves or groceries for their kids. I spoke with African Americans in really, really dangerous parts of Detroit, where arson and gangs and opportunity have gone up. Arson and gangs have gone up, and opportunity in schools have been cut. In Wisconsin, I interviewed a lot of people who have been decimated by Scott Walker, but also these trade deals who have sold their jobs to other countries. The Midwest, a lot of these blue-collar workers are progressive. They got hoodwinked by Donald Trump because Donald Trump was talking like a progressive economically in many ways against NAFTA. He said, I'm for universal health care. Obviously, it was a lie. But more importantly than what Trump sold them is what Clinton and the Democratic Party were not able to convince them of, because Hillary Clinton's record and the Democratic Party's record for the working people has been abysmal. Abysmal. And by the way, I'll put it in the chat one more time. If you want more reporting like that, if you want me to get back in the field to show you these people, to expose what's actually going on, subscribe to my Patreon. It's patreon.com/Jordan Chariton Reports. Patreon.com/Jordan Chariton Reports. I'm not asking you to send me your money so I can go have a steak. Although I'm going to try going vegetarian for a while too. Your subscription, $2 a month, $5 a month, $10 a month, is what's going to help me get back out there, as well as create a media network behind me of other reporters. So we don't only have to report from our apartments with bad audio and New York City sirens blaring, but so we could get out there and expose what is going on. so we could speak with these disaffected progressives all over the country, so we could show that the Democratic Party has sold out and continues to sell out. Patreon link not working? Well, here it is again. Straight from Patreon. That should be working. I need you to help me expose oligarchy. I need you to help me expose the Democratic Party. I need you to help me expose the environmental contamination, the environmental genocide, the police brutality. Yes, for the time being, while my back is healing from back surgery, and as I try to build a company, thank you. Armory says $5 a month, I'm doing it. Thank you. This money, which I'm transparent, you go to the Patreon, you'll see how much we have so far. Right now, we got 127 patrons at $660 a month. And we just launched it, I believe, 2 weeks ago. It's Patreon Jordan Chariton Reports. Let me find it for you one more time. I don't know why you're getting a... hold on. Sorry, folks. Let's make sure it's working. It's working for me on my computer, so I'm not positive why you're getting a 404. But if you're not getting it, it's patreon.com/Jordan Chariton Reports. That's patreon.com/Jordan Chariton Reports. You will help me get back out there to do the reporting you came to expect from me while I was at TYT. But I think this study is super important because we won't get most. Hold on, you keep saying it's not working. Let's see. Huh, that's interesting. It isn't working when they're there. All right, patreon.com/Jordan Chariton Reports. Just type it in, patreon.com/Jordan Chariton Reports. And I'll try one more time as we go further. But the thing is, what's so important about this study, you're not going to hear from activists. Patreon.com/Jordan Chariton. Sorry, folks. Just making sure you have it. Try that, and just try typing it in your browser. It should work. You're not going to hear from most economists in the United States that Bernie Sanders' strategy and what Bernie Sanders has been saying for the last two years, to the last 40 years, is actually the way to beat Donald Trump, because they don't want Bernie Sanders to win. CNN doesn't want Bernie Sanders or progressives like him to win. The New York Times, the Washington Post, of all places, do not want the progressive movement to be victorious. They don't want to show you that when you actually run and you propose policies that help the middle class, when you propose policies that help working people, when you propose policies that help people who work in manufacturing or in auto or at plants or do things with their hands for a living. Because the corporate media, they don't give a damn about those people. And Hillary Clinton's campaign and the Democratic establishment, they can pretend that they do, but they don't. So Thomas Pickett's, again, I'll put the link in, here I'm going to put the link into the chat right now so you also can read this article. It's basically saying what we all know. And by the way, what data shows. All the polls showed Bernie Sanders was beating Hillary Clinton. Bernie Sanders was beating Donald Trump by 10 to 15 points. Yeah, the establishment says, well, that was before all the ads came out against him. Well, what were they going to do? Say, oh, the socialist boogeyman. Well, Hillary Clinton lost Wisconsin by 1 point. Hillary Clinton lost Michigan by 1 point. Hillary Clinton lost Pennsylvania, I believe, by 1 to 2 points. These were all states that have been decimated by NAFTA. These were all states that have been decimated by trade deals. These were all states who have been union busted. You don't think Bernie Sanders, who is one of the strongest politicians on all of those issues, could have beat Donald Trump if Hillary Clinton, who is not strong on those issues, if a Democratic Party is not strong for those issues, you don't think Bernie Sanders would win? If you think that, you're smoking something strong. And I hope you'll stay with me. I'm aware there's another show going on, but I think my work is better. I'm going to read you a little bit more from this report because I think it's very important. All right. The go left strategy hints at what Piketty has called the, quote, class-based party system that dominated Western democracies in the 1950s and 1960s. In those decades, lower class voters from different dimensions, lower education voters, lower income voters, tended to vote for the same party or coalition, while upper and middle class voters from the different dimensions tended to vote for the other party or coalition. Similar as the Democratic Party factions may seem to the right, similar as the Democratic factions may seem to the right, which seem unable to distinguish a liberal billionaire like Warren Buffett from, quote, a communist, they represent radically different positions and have different constituencies. The Clintonite coalition tended to rely on pandering to identity groups and a sort of vague multiculturalism that posited that billionaires, corporations, and the poor could live in some kind of perfect harmony, even though the former rely on the exploitation of the latter to exist. Oh my God, I could not have said it better. Let's get that again. The Clintonite coalition, which is still very strong, she's not leading it, but they're still there. The Clintonite coalition tended to rely on pandering to identity groups and a sort of vague multiculturalism that posited that billionaires, corporations, and the poor could live in some kind of perfect harmony, even though the former rely on the exploitation of the latter to exist. So when Hillary Clinton says, oh, I'm going to tell Wall Street to just cut it out, she's basically, as they said, she's placating the poor and pandering to working class people. Oh, I'm going to tell them to cut it out, Wall Street. And I'm going to be very tough to work on climate change as I take more and more fracking money. People aren't stupid anymore, but the Democratic Party is banking on the fact that they are stupid. Tom Perez is banking on the fact that working class people will just hate Trump enough in order to basically vote for whatever Wall Street loved, big oil loved, big pharma loved Democrat. And it's not going to work. And Thomas Piketty's study shows this. Critics like Phillips argue that Clinton and her DNC lackeys failed to grasp that their milquetoast liberalism lacked a comprehensive ideology. There were no scapegoats, and America was already great in Clinton's words. Those words appears tone deaf to the millions of Americans struggling to make ends meet, who sought a scapegoat and heard a more sensible explanation for their woes from Donald Trump. Meanwhile, the strategy of Bernie Sanders, mirrored in other left organizing groups in the United States that seek to push the Democratic Party to the left, including Our Revolution and the Democratic Socialists of America, is to offer a more serious material analysis of the underpinnings of oppression and suffering in the United States, and to scapegoat income inequality caused by an unjust economic system propped up by the elite. Sanders and his counterparts overseas, particularly UK Labour leader Jeremy Corbyn, offer that aforementioned, quote, strong, egalitarian, internationalist platform that has the potential to, quote, unite low education, low income voters from all origins, as Piketty describes. Though Sanders came up short in primaries, he was vindicated in the aftermath of the general election in several ways. First, many of the Rust Belt states that Trump carried, states Hillary Clinton had banked on winning, were won by Sanders in the primary, including Michigan and Wisconsin. Second, post-election studies suggested that had Sanders been the Democratic nominee, he would have defeated Trump by a wide margin. Let me say it again. He would have defeated Trump by a wide margin. Third, Sanders remains the most popular politician in the U.S., despite an ongoing bile-spitting campaign orchestrated by Democratic insiders like Sally Albright, who called Sanders racist for proposing free college. Can you believe that? Called Sanders racist for proposing free college, or Peter Dow, who blamed Sanders for Clinton's loss. Finally, Clinton's victory was aided considerably by a corrupt party apparatus that was already in the bag for Clinton, a former interim DNC chair, Donna Brazile, has described. So the point of this isn't to continually go back to the 2016 election. The point of this is not to continually bash Hillary Clinton, who frankly I don't give a damn about anymore. I think we've all spent enough time on Hillary Rodham Clinton. But the point is, when you continually have these neoliberal hacks who blame me, the Russian puppets like me and Glenn Greenwald and Lee Comp and Jimmy Dore. I mean, the list goes on. Jamal Thomas. When they blame Bernie Sanders supporters, and when they say, you just need to eat your vegetables, you just need to fall in line. No. The data shows that's wrong. The results in 2016 show that's wrong. And now a famous French economist whose work is world-renowned shows us that is wrong. And sorry if I'm a little slow today. I have a cold, not feeling great, but just trying to push through. You know what could help me push through? The only medicine I need is your support. Patreon.com/Jordan Sheridan Reports. So as we go on towards the midterms, as we go on towards 2020, all you're going to hear from the Democratic Party is Trump, bad, Trump, bad, Trump, bad, Trump, Russia, Trump, Russia, Trump, Russia. You're not going to hear, well, why don't we look into these progressive policies? Why don't we look into these progressive politicians? Why don't we look into something different to go up against Trump? Rather than a Wall Street soaked, big oil soaked, big pharma soaked, fake progressive. You will hear about Stormy. That's right, Ian. Well, I'm here to tell you. You will hear the truth from me. You will hear the truth from Jimmy. You will hear the truth from Ro Khanna. You will hear the truth from Bernie Sanders. You will hear the truth, economically speaking, from Elizabeth Warren. But we need to stop allowing these neoliberal hacks to lie and to distort the truth. Because there is data, there is studies, there is your own eyes seeing the movement going on around this country. We are not going to play by their rules anymore. And as I just talked about in the prior segment, we are seeing victories. We are seeing environmental victories on a slow level, on a lower level. It's not yet, but you know what? They just had hundreds of thousands of people march for gun control, led by students. That is a victory. All these small things that don't seem like much now are going to eventually add up together to a progressive explosion in this country. But you have to be patient and you have to do the work. And you have to support the journalists like me who want to get out there to put the pressure where it belongs, not on Russia, on plutocrats in America, on the Democratic Party pretending to be for the working class, on the politicians who poison citizens in Flint and elsewhere and then cover it up, which I'm about to get to after this segment. We could sit and bloviate about Russia till we're blue in the face to get clicks, like some shows do. We could sit and bloviate about Stormy Daniels till we're blue in the face. We could distract audiences and we could distract the public just for clicks, and so we don't have to talk about anything real or serious forever and ever. But I have a radical idea. Let's expose oligarchy. I have a radical idea. Let's try to get some people that are doing wrong and not protecting the people, and let's expose them. Let's put the pressure on them. Let's create journalism that actually creates protests in America. Let's create journalism that actually inspires people to run for office. Let's create pressure that makes powerful people doing the wrong thing have to answer for that. Let's create journalism and maybe get some people fired or thrown out of office. Does that sound interesting to you? Let's create journalism that actually puts out the truth about Bernie Sanders and the progressive movement and puts out the data and the studies that prove it. You're not going to see the study from Thomas Piketty that I just read on CNN tonight or MSNBC tonight or the New York Times or the Washington Post because it's not in their business interest. Let me say that again. It's not in their business interest to do it. I'm going to my next story, but as I continue on my rant, one more time, folks, help me get back out there to cover these things. I'm getting cabin fever. You guys are the ones that are going to create the media you would like to see. I can't do it without you. So I put the link in there. If it's not working, just type it in yourself. Patreon.com/Jordan Sheridan Reports. I would like to get up to between 1,000 and 2,000 patrons rather soon. We're far away. We're at 127. If I can get up to 1,000 to 2,000 of you, then I know we got something here. Then I know we're going to get back into the field because we're going to start having the money to do it. It's not going to be perfect. It's not going to be polished. It's going to be raw. It's going to be honest, and it's going to be aggressive. Because I actually believe in aggressive, progressive, not to steal a line from my friend Jimmy Dore, type of journalism. Moving on. So, if you don't know, almost 4 years ago, April 25th, the residents of Flint, Michigan were poisoned. There was basically through the terrible attempts to privatize a pipeline. They built a privatized pipeline, and in the in-between, while that privatized pipeline was being built, we'll just let these poor white and black people drink water from the Flint River that is not drinkable, that they didn't add the proper anti-corrosive materials, as my phone rings. They didn't add the proper anti-corrosive materials, and lead leached out. And we are now April 25th, coming up, 4 years since that disastrous decision. And the people are still poisoned. There are EPA-funded scientists saying that the water's normal now in Flint. Nothing to see here. The water is normal in Flint. Well, I've been working on a piece for at least 6 months now that I'm working to get published. I actually talked about it in some of my behind-the-scenes videos. I do daily videos on my Patreon that patrons get. So if you want to know about the story behind getting this story published and all the obstacles I've had to face, including corporate media, who aren't interested in exposing fake science in Flint, I have Erin Brockovich on the record. I have plumbers on the record. I have water experts on the record. I have residents on the record. But if you want to know about the corporate media and what they're really for and what was told to me, why they wouldn't publish it, I'm not giving up yet. I got a few others to go to. You could watch it at my Patreon now. Those video diaries I'm doing, not daily, but a couple times a week I'm doing a video diary so you get the behind the scenes of what I'm working on, what I'm dealing with, and some of the things that you might not know about, including the conversation I had getting a call in February from the FBI about my arrest in St. Louis. Wouldn't you like to know about that? Patreon.com/Jordan Sheridan Reports. So this week, there are two Michigan state officials. Their preliminary trials for manslaughter are going on. Nick Lyon was the director of Michigan's Health and Human Services. His preliminary trial, which has been going on for a while, preliminary examination going on. Eden Wells, who was the chief medical executive, that's going on. And they called Mark Edwards. Mark Edwards is a Virginia Tech scientist, Dr. Mark Edwards, I should say. He was first credited with identifying the Flint lead crisis. At first, his work was very valuable. Residents really depended on him and appreciated him for kind of blowing the whistle on the Flint water crisis. But all of a sudden, as he got money from the EPA, $168,000 in total from the EPA, and then as he got hundreds of thousands of dollars in grants from private foundations like the Mott Foundation and other foundations in Michigan that the state of Michigan, that would be Rick Snyder, helped him get, all of a sudden his science radically changed. And all of a sudden the water was getting much better in Flint, much faster. So that's what my story is about that I've been working on. So if you want to see that story, if you want to know what's going on, help me get there. Patreon.com/Jordan Sheridan Reports, and go listen to the video diary. You'll know what corporate media has been doing. It's astounding to me that when I put it right in corporate media's face, a very well-reported, a very well-researched story, I got this, kind of well-known person named Erin Brockovich quoted several times. They can't be bothered to read it. It's not Trump involved. But there is also something that just happened in Flint that I think is 100% disgraceful and disgusting. So we're going to read you this story. It's from the Detroit News. And essentially, Governor Rick Snyder, he is the Michigan governor who presided over the poisoning of the citizens of Flint. An aide to Governor Snyder basically told a Flint activist, crawl back in your hole. And essentially said to a Flint activist, How dare you? How dare you question the governor of Michigan? How dare you question what he's done for Flint, which is just a joke, a complete joke, and frankly insulting to the people of Flint. So Rich Baird, who has some BS title, I think it's the transformation manager, and is essentially Governor Rick Snyder's hatchet man. He is known in Michigan as doing all the dirty work that the governor can't do himself. And some of that dirty work, kind of on the line as far as legal. So, a top Governor Rick Snyder aide is under fire for a text exchange he started with a Flint activist after the man criticized the governor's handling of the water crisis, telling the resident in a private exchange that Snyder, quote, does not deserve to be vilified by those who have no basis to judge him. No basis to judge him. So the residents of Flint, Michigan have no basis to judge the governor of Michigan, who, despite his lies, got plenty of notice, plenty of warnings that the people in Flint, Michigan, poor African Americans and whites, were having rashes, having nosebleeds, having hair loss, brown water, black water. He knew all about this for quite some time. He also knew about the risks of switching from Detroit's water system to the Flint River. But he feigned ignorance. He said, nobody told me. My Department of Health and Human Services didn't tell me. And Michigan Department of Environmental Quality, which is a state environmental agency, I'm just the governor, but nobody told. Nobody told little old me. Rich Baird, the governor's point man in the Flint recovery effort, wrote in the text message to Arthur Woodson that he should, quote, just crawl back into whatever hole of illusion you reside in and hope that lazy reporters will occasionally forget that you ceased to be relevant long ago. I'm going to read that one more time for you if you're not insulted by the first time. Just crawl back into whatever hole of illusion you reside in and hope that lazy reporters will occasionally forget that you ceased to be relevant long ago. The text followed Woodson's comments in a Detroit News February 26th article about the public apathy towards the Flint involuntary manslaughter court hearings involving two state health officials because the legal proceedings weren't focused on higher officials such as Snyder. Quote, if you get Richard Baird right now, if he goes on trial, they will start looking because they know Richard Baird. Unsuccessful mayoral candidate Woodson told the News. They know that Snyder's right-hand man, so they'd feel like that would be close to getting Snyder. The comment prompted Baird to excoriate Woodson for saying he should be on trial and boast about, quote, devoting the past 2+ years to try to get support and assistance to the people in my hometown who really need it. Baird is from Flint originally. We are surrounded by politicians who cut and run and refuse to accept responsibility for something that happened on their watch, even though they didn't cause it. Baird then called Flint, quote, a case study in abandonment, adding, I have not abandoned the city. You have no idea what I have done personally and professionally for people I will never meet. I think they meant Woodson called Flint a case study in abandonment. And Baird said, I have not abandoned this city. You have no idea what I have done personally and professionally for people I will never meet. Quote, but you have not earned the right. You have not earned the right, you little peasant. You poor Flint resident. You have not earned the right to disrespect our governor, who does not deserve to be vilified by those who have no basis to judge him. You have not earned the right to disrespect our governor because he's some king. What is he, a dictator? Who does not deserve to be vilified by those who have no basis to judge him, Baird wrote, adding that, quote, you could say whatever the hell you want, but know that when judgment day comes, I will not be turned away based on hatred of people who don't even know me but think they could talk about me. Don't bother responding, Art. Don't bother responding, Art. I mean, I don't even know where the hell to start. The arrogance, the cruelness, the evilness. So you're saying that They should not, they're not allowed to question the governor of Michigan. They're not allowed to ask for accountability of the governor who oversaw the poisoning of them, American citizens. You're saying that this activist should crawl back into his hole? I mean, if this isn't the disgusting stench of oligarchy, if this isn't the disgusting stench of arrogance, if this isn't the disgusting sense of sociopaths, I don't know what is. How dare Governor Snyder's transformation manager, how dare he tell a Flint activist, or anyone for that matter, they don't have the right to judge or question or vilify the governor of Michigan, who still lives in his very expensive house, who has faced no criminal inquiry, who now we know, as I've reported on, perjured himself in front of Congress as to when he first found out about the Flint water crisis. And you want to talk about that the residents of Flint have, how dare them question Richard Baird? How dare them question the governor of Michigan? How dare they vilify Saint Snyder, King Snyder, Supreme Leader Snyder? I'll give you a quote that I just got from one Flint resident who I got a comment from. His name's Tony Palladino. He is somebody I've interviewed many times there, a real blue-collar guy, looks like Santa Claus. When I asked him for his comment on Richard Baird's statement, he said he is protecting his boss who made some bad decisions rather through MDEQ, EPA, or denial of dates when he knew what or when. Art has been an informed activist, and at time a few of us didn't agree with him, but to tell him to crawl back into his hole because his statements are irrelevant, to hell with how Baird feels about protecting what is said to Snyder, while he himself has done nothing but backdoor dealings with the political elite of this city. His comments to Art is a slap in the face to all activists against the state disaster they put on us. That's from Tony Palladino. One more time. Baird is protecting his boss, who made some bad decisions rather through Michigan Department of Environmental Quality, EPA, or denial of dates when he knew what or when. He's referencing Snyder denying or saying he knew about the Flint water crisis or the Legionella threat at X date when he later came out that he was told about it months before then. And frankly, he was probably told about it well over a year into the crisis. But he just pretends, oh no, I'm just the governor of the state. I didn't know that poor black and white people were being poisoned in Flint. I thought this was really powerful from Tony. He says, to hell with how Baird feels about protecting what is said to Snyder, while he himself has done nothing but backdoor dealings with the political elite of this city. His comment to Art is a slap in the face of activists against this state disaster they put on us. And that's from Tony Palladino, a resident of Flint, who, by the way, your support, us building this Patreon, us building up this media revolution is going to get me back to Flint. It's going to get me to places like Flint. So you don't have to hear from me. You could hear from the residents. You don't have to hear from me, but you could actually hear from affected people who are still actively sick, who are still taking showers. Tony literally takes showers to this day, and his eyes burn. And he can't stop coughing. His poor wife has illness after illness brought on by the Flint water crisis. Person after person after person, resident after resident, source after source that I continue to speak with on a daily basis have had their lives destroyed. And now they are being told to go crawl back in their little hole that they came from. And don't you dare vilify the governor. And don't you dare question Saint Snyder. Well, how about this? And sorry, YouTube. Fuck Rich Baird. And fuck their arrogance. You don't, if you're a public official, you're supposed to, and you represent a state, you're supposed to work to protect all of its people, not just your donors, not just your plutocratic friends, not just people you have crab with, not just people you have, caviar with on weekends. And then after you do this to these people, and please, Rich Baird and Governor Snyder have done nothing for the people of Flint. That money that came from the U.S. Congress has not even all the way gone to the citizens of Flint. And there are still emergency management rules, which is why the Flint water crisis happened in the first place, because an unelected emergency manager was allowed to make the decisions for Flint rather than its democratically elected mayor. And the emergency manager was essentially a proxy for Rick Snyder. Yet, nobody should question the governor. Nobody has the right to vilify the governor. This governor is just thank his lucky stars we live in an oligarchy or he'd be sitting in a friggin' jail cell. Ian says public officials are supposed to be servants of the people. Take our orders, not the orders of big money. From your lips to God's ears. Kevin says, Jordan, your reporting in these places was so valuable. You have no idea how inspiring you are. Thank you. Thank you, Kevin. And I'm not trying to lay it on thick, guys, but I'm putting it in the chat one more time because it's so important. It's so important that we build a media company from you. I don't want to take on corporate sponsors. I don't want to take on plutocrats. I'm not going to take meetings with Democratic Party kingmakers. I'm not going to take meetings with, very high-powered Hollywood types to fund me. I want to be answering to you, the people. I want to create journalism that you want and need, not for clicks, not for ratings, not to go viral on social media, but to actually help create change in this country. But I need you to get me there. I cannot get in the field if I don't have a cameraman. I cannot get in the field if we don't have equipment. I cannot bring you other reporters if I can't pay them. I mean, that's just the reality. So if you have the money, $2 a month, $5 a month, $10 a month, I appreciate it because I know not all of us are rolling in it. But this is serious. We either sit here and crap on these people because it makes us feel good, or we actually get out there and expose these people and hold them accountable. I want to do the latter, but I need you to help me get there. So, bottom line is this. What's happening in Flint is not just about the people of Flint. Of course it's about the people of Flint. It's about how far we've come away from what America was billed as. This shiny city on a hill. Give me a break, shining city on a hill. Might as well be a shining city 6 feet under. A country where government officials who do wrong, and intentionally or unintentionally, poison people, they're not held accountable. A country where if you even question a government official, you could be arrested, or you're vilified, you're told to crawl back into your hole. I don't want to live in a country like that. I certainly want to report on those things so we could change it. These are very dangerous times that we're living in. And I think there are times where the emperor having no clothes is more evident than ever. A Google user asked, what's the name of your media organization you're starting up? Wouldn't you like to know? We will reveal that in the coming weeks. We have a name, we have a logo, and we have investors looking at the business proposal right now. But we will reveal it. It will make it a lot easier for me to reveal it if I grow this Patreon. If I can grow the Patreon, it will help me to go towards progressive, capital P, progressive investors and show them, hey, we got the support. Now we need the startup capital because there's a lot of equipment to buy, and there's planes to fly places and rent-a-cars and all those things. So I'm not asking you money to pay my bills. I'm asking you money to get me back in the field so I could do what you deserve and need. And that's the type of journalism that most people aren't willing to do. And I want to bring you other reporters because it's going to take more than me. But we're not going to change Flint. We're not going to change Flint. We're not going to change what's going on in Standing Rock. We're not going to change what's going on in St. Louis. We're not going to change what just happened in Sacramento if more people aren't being exposed to what's happening. Not from articles written in corporate media, but from cameras and microphones in their face. And people being aggressive, not violent, but aggressive with the powerful. I'm not interested in having ice cream sandwiches with politicians or being nice to them to gain access. I'd rather go sell my soul to the devil and be an accountant or something. And it's going to be, somebody just said in the chat, it's going to require the same mentality as Bernie's movement. No, I'm not going to be a mouthpiece for Bernie Sanders. I'm going to report him, cover him critically if he does need to be covered critically. I am going to say when I disagree with him. But for all those people that donated $27 because they believed in something bigger than themselves, I ask you, consider subscribing. This is not a charity. Consider subscribing. Even if it's $2 a month, even if it's $5 a month, even if it's $10 a month. If you could sacrifice one thing so that we could actually build something that helps deliver justice to the people of Flint, helps get the word out about Standing Rock. Before I came on today, I just posted a podcast where I did a 40-minute interview with LaDonna Brave Bull Allard of Standing Rock. I wasn't aware of some of the things she told me, that her and others in the No Dabble movement are still being followed and monitored by the Morton County Sheriff. I wasn't aware that they're even more impoverished now after No Dabble than they were before the Standing Rock Sioux Tribe. I wasn't aware that Trump has cut almost every single one of their programs. But how do we get the word out? How do we get people activated to do something if we don't have reporting on these things? If we don't have people in the field speaking truth to power, exposing corruption, getting the truth out there? So again, I appreciate you watching me on a daily basis. I appreciate you following me on Twitter. I appreciate you liking me on Facebook and all those things. But right now, this is a money where your mouth is moment. There's no other way for me to say it. For those of you who are living paycheck to paycheck, for those of you who don't know if you'll be able to pay the rent this month, do not give me your money. I'm not trying to, be responsible for anyone going hungry or without heat or a roof. That's not what this is about. But for those of you that can spare that, it's not a donation. You are subscribing to something so we could create something much bigger. And I will be transparent. You will know where this money is going. That you have my word. You could clip this video and you could repeat it over and over because you will know where this money is going to. You will know who it's going to hire. You will know what equipment we're buying with it. You will know what programs we're buying to help get the word out. And most importantly, you will see the change once we're in the field. You will see that this type of reporting is very, very badly needed. But I cannot do it if I don't have you. Plain and simple, I can't do it. It's not enough to, this is nothing. There is definitely a major, major need for the Jimmy Dores of the world and the Kyle Kalinskis and Mike Figueredo and Jamarl Thomas and a lot of independent media figures and Lee Camp. But I think there's also a need to get out there in the field and show you what's going on. I think there's also a need to get a microphone in a politician's face and challenge them. Not hold them accountable like the corporate media says, but actually get their face, make them uncomfortable. I think there is a need to show you the genocide happening in this country against African Americans. Because they were being murdered, let's call it what it is, all over this country. And as a white guy, I can't pretend to understand what they're going through, but I can tell you it ain't right. and it needs to be shown, and it needs to be covered. I want to show you the opioid crisis. I want to show you the water crisis. But I need you to help me get me there. That's it. I will be back tomorrow. I'm a little sick. I have a cold, so I was going to go a little longer, but it's time for my nap. I'm not feeling great. I actually have to go get medicine. I'll end on this. We had 2 good stories today and one, not so great. Be the change you want to see in this country. Be the change you want to see in the media. If you can subscribe, one more time, patreon.com/Jordan Chariton Reports. I'm giving you everything I got every day. I did 3 podcast interviews yesterday. One of them is out already. The other 2 will be out next week. I am listening on Sundays. I will be watching all the Sunday morning shows and then doing a podcast called Beat the Press to tell you all the lies being told in corporate media as a public service. I watch corporate media, so you do not have to. I'm doing daily video diaries, so you know the behind the scenes of what's going on. I'm creating the content that I think you deserve to see, and I'm not in the field yet because I don't have the funds to go. I'd also like to add staff around me to help. Thank you for watching. Peace.